Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The title of the presentation is The Art of Calculation and Preparation of Total Parenteral Nutrition. Total Parenteral Nutrition. How a prescriber can tailor it, and what is the role of pharmacist. Throughout my presentation, I'm going to focus on these 2 points. This will be the sequence of my presentation, starting from PN verification and going through indication, calculations and PN writing and preparations. Finally, I will talk about little bit of aseptic technique. Yes, as a pharmacist, we do PN order verification and we design formula. After calculation, we compound PNs aseptically and we dispense it at patient location. Some definitions. Parenteral nutrition is one of the most important therapeutic modalities invented in the last several decades. Aspen defines parenteral nutrition as an intravenous administration of nutrition which may include protein, carbohydrates, fats, minerals, electrolyte, vitamins and other trace elements for the patient who cannot eat or absorb enough food through tube feeding formula. The main goal of TPN is to provide the required fluid, energy and electrolyte to the patient, and each TPN is specifically tailored for the patient according to his or her target. Achieving the right nutritional intake in the timely manner can help patient to combat complications and be an important part of patient's recovery. TPN is an interdisciplinary nutritional care, starting from patient assessment. Once patient is identified and verified as right candidate for PN, so prescriber will start ordering for PN. After the order is placed, pharmacist will clinically review the PN order, and after making the calculations required, then pharmacists need to compound the PN and need to be dispensed at nursing location. Nurse need to receive TPN and to administer the patient at right time, and the patient need to be monitored for patient outcome and any kinds of complications, and the whole process need to be documented. Let us talk about PN verification. We all know TPN is a high alert preparation, and according to USP 797, it is a medium risk CSP. So we need to follow the hospital protocol for high alert medication for each step of preparation. So verification includes verify the patient information and the clinical review of the patient to identify the patient is the right candidate. Keeping in mind, we need to always encourage enteral nutrition wherever it is possible, even it is a piece of dates or a bit of milk. Of course, TPN is not a first choice of nutritional therapy, and pharmacist is responsible for pharmaceutical compatibility checking for the all additives. The patient information verification include the identification of patient at first 3 names and medical record number, date, time, PN order, age, weight, history of allergy, diagnosis, PN indication, vascular access and infusion rates, prescriber's information. And the clinical verification include reviewing the patient profile including the laboratory data, then verify the appropriateness of calorie, fluid intake, dose of electrolyte, and compare the order with the previous day order for any substantial changes. And we need to check the compatibility and dose of any additives like insulin or levocarnitine, and we need to check the compatibility of calcium and phosphorus. In case of peripheral parenteral nutrition, we need to find out the concentration for the final concentration of amino acid and dextrose. So we will move to the indication. The common indications are dysfunctional and inaccessible GI tract, prolonged pancreatitis and peritonitis, GI malformation, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, non-operative mechanical bowel obstruction, gut immaturity, preterm infants and pediatric patients with a clinical scenario to keep NPO, severe malnutrition, patient with post-GI procedure, patient with intractable non-specific diarrhea, patient with PCMO or vasopressor support, necrotizing enterocolitis and short bowel syndrome. This list is not complete, but I listed most of the indications. Let us move to the venous axis. These are the different kinds of venous axis. Let us discuss as central and peripheral axis. The central line, which can administer high osmolarity, so we can accommodate more concentration of dextrose and protein, and it is highly suitable for long-term TPN. And it is highly choosable for the patient with volume restriction, with severe malnutrition. But besides these advantages, the central line has got some disadvantages, like high risk of infection and a chance of catheter-related mechanical complication. In case of peripheral line, it is osmolarity rate limited. We can only infuse 900 milliosmol per liter to the adult. But in case of neonates, we can reach up to 1100. Here, the maximum dextrose concentration for neonate is 12.5, while the adult will limit to 7.5. And the maximum protein concentration is 2.5. It is suitable for adjunct enteral feeding and patient with mild and pre-existing malnutrition. And it is highly recommendable when the patient is at catheter sepsis and the patient is having good peripheral access. But in case of peripheral line, we can only administer 10 milliequivalent per liter of calcium and 40 milliequivalent of potassium. Let us do some calculation. This table shows the maintenance fluid requirement for the neonatal babies according to the birth weight. Extremely low birth weight babies, we can start with 80 ml and we can reach up to 160 within a week. For very low birth weight babies, again we can start with 80 ml, slowly we can reach up to 150 within 7 days. And for low birth weight babies, less volume is required, 60 ml per kg we can start, and we can move by increasing the volume. For pediatric patient and adult patient, how to find out the fluid requirement? It's very easy to determine fluid requirement by holiday cigar method. According to this method, the first 10 kg requires 10 ml per kg, and babies more than 10 kg, after 10 kg we required 50 ml per kg up to 20 kg. A patient with more than 20 kg, first 20 kg requires 1500 ml, and after 20 kg, each kg requires 20 ml per kg. If we consider hourly requirements, less than 10 kg require 4 ml per kg per hour, then 10 to 20 kg requires 40 ml plus 2 ml per kg per hour, and more than 20 kg requires 60 ml plus 1 ml per kg per hour. Okay, next, infusion rate. Calculation of infusion rate in 2-in-1 TPN. In 2-in-1 TPN, aqueous and lipid portions are prepared separately. Here the dextro amino bag is infused for 24 hours. For the infusion rate, the total TPN volume minus lipid volume divided by the total infusion rate. Then for lipid is infused from 12 to 24 hours according to the patient need. And volume of lipid can be determined by the formula grams of lipid multiplied by the weight into a multiplier of 5. The 5 from, we use 20% of lipid, that is why we multiply by 5, and plus the volume of lipid used. From this value we can find out the rate of infusion of lipid by the formula volume of lipid in ml divided by duration of infusion. Next will be the energy goal. This table shows the neonatal and pediatric caloric requirements based on ages. Preterm neonates required more energy, like 90 to 120 kilocalorie per kg. Babies less than 6 months required 85 to 105, and 6 to 12 months required 80 to 100, while toddlers required 50 to 90 kilocalorie per kg. Teenagers require much lesser energy, 30 to 50 kilocalorie per kg. And we can also determine the caloric requirement by these equations for the adult patient. Harris-Benedict equation and Mifflin equation is use the actual body weight of the patient, so it can be used for determining caloric requirements for healthy and non-critically ill patient. Next, Penn State equation. It is a modified Mifflin equation. It is used to determine energy requirement for critically ill ventilated patients. The sources of energy. We all know the sources of energy. In case of TPN, 60% of energy sourced from carbohydrate, while 10 to 15% from protein, and the remaining 50 to 20% is from fat. Let us see how we'll do dosing for neonate. For preterm and term, protein can be dosed from 3 to 4 gram per kg per day, and dextrose we can start GIR 6 to 8 and we can reach up to 14 mg per kg per minute. Lipid we can start with a lower dose of 0.5 to 1 and we can reach up to 3. But there are many studies explains the neonate after birth, the first day itself the neonate can tolerate 3 gram per kg per day. So we can go with directly 3 gram also. For toddlers and adolescents, the requirement is bit less. So for example, protein we can start from 1.5 to 2.5, dextrose 3 to 6 and we can reach up to 10. Lipid from 1 to 2 we can reach up to 2.5. For adolescents, protein only required 0.8 to 2 and dextrose 2.5 to 3 mg per kg per minute we can reach up to 6, while lipid is 1 to 2. Let us consider an interesting area. Let us consider this patient for writing TPN. Okay, this is a term infant, weight is 2.5 and fluid intake is 100 ml per kg per day, and baby is not having any other IV fluid. Baby is on NPO and caloric need is calculated 85 kg per kilocalorie per kg per day. Baby is having central access and age is 7 days. Electrolyte requirement 4 milliequivalent per kg, potassium 3 milliequivalent per kg, calcium 300 milliequivalent per kg, phosphorus 1 millimole per kg and magnesium 0.4 milliequivalent per kg. From this scenario, how we will write a prescription? Let us move on. First, let's see how to deal with the calorie. First, macronutrient. First, we will take protein. The dose is 3 gram per kg per day. We know the patient weight is 2.5. So the total gram is 7.5 gram. We are aware each 1 gram of protein will deliver 4 kilocalorie of energy. So the total 7.5 gram will deliver 30 kilocalorie of energy. The balanced energy is sourced from non-protein sources, that is dextrose and lipid, and they shared the non-protein calorie 70:30 sequence. So for dextrose, the non-protein kilocalorie is 183, so 70% of 183, 128 kilocalorie can be shared from dextrose. Then how will you find out the grams of dextrose? It can be determined by dividing the total calorie from dextrose divided by calorie delivered by 1 gram of dextrose. So it is 38 gram for us. Next, lipid. Similarly, 30% of non-protein kilocalorie is shared from lipid, but for lipid is delivering high kilocalorie, each 1 gram deliver 10 kilocalorie. So total gram requirement is 55 by 10, 5.5 gram. Now, we know the gram of dextrose. Then how will you find out GIR? GIR is gram of dextrose divided by weight in kg of patient into 1.44. It is a multiplier. In this case, it is 10.56. And if we use dextrose 50%, each 2 ml deliver 1 gram of dextrose. So we require totally 76 ml of dextrose to achieve 38 gram of dextrose. Similarly, for protein, we use 10% amino acid. So each 10 ml will deliver 1 gram of protein. So we required 75 ml to deliver 7.5 gram of protein. For lipid, the total gram of lipid requirement is 5.5. Then patient weight is 2.5, so 2.2 gram per kg per day. We use 20% lipid. So each 5 ml will deliver 1 gram. So total volume will be 5.5 into 5, 27.5. And we use lipid 10 ml. The sorted lipid portion is 37.5 ml. And how will you find out infusion rate? For this baby, we are decided to infuse for 16 hours So infusion rate will be total lipid volume divided by lipid infusion hours. So 37.5 divided by 16, it is 2.34 ml per hour. Next, let us calculate the concentration of macronutrients. It is highly important in case of peripheral nutrition. Okay, so here what is the volume of aqueous portion? The total volume is 250 minus lipid is 37, we already know. So the balance will be 212.5 ml. Then we know infused for 24 hours. So 212.5 divided by 24 is equal to 8.85 ml per hour. Then percentage of dextrose, how will you find out? We can find out the percentage of dextrose by dividing the total grams of dextrose divided by total aqueous volume multiplied by 100. For us it is 17.88. Similarly for amino acid, 7.5 divided by the total aqueous volume multiplied by 100, it is 3.5 percentage. Then we will move to the electrolyte. Sodium, according to the dose, it is 4 mg per kg. So the total requirement is 10 mg since the body weight is 2.5. It is shared between sodium chloride and sodium acetate. Potassium dose is 3 mg per kg. The total will be 7.5. Then it is shared between potassium chloride and potassium phosphate. Phosphorus is 1 millimole per kg, total requirement 2.5 millimole per kg. From potassium phosphate, each 1.5 milliequivalent of potassium will also deliver 1 millimole of phosphorus. So our requirement is 2.5. 4 milliequivalent of potassium phosphate will also deliver 2.7 almost millimole of phosphorus. Then MgSulf is 0.4 mg. Calcium is 300 mg per kg, so it is totally 750 mg. When we convert into milliequivalent, it will get 3.45 milliequivalent because every 100 mg is 0.46 milliequivalent. Heparin we use for light pattern C, the dose is 0.25 IU per ml. Water soluble vitamin 1 ml per kg, trace element is 0.5. Okay, now how will you convert this milliequivalent into volume? So this is based on the reagent we use. So for example, if we use 3% sodium chloride, 1 ml of 3% sodium chloride will deliver 0.513 milliequivalent of sodium. So our requirement is 4 milliequivalent. Then total milliequivalent divided by milliequivalent per ml, we will get the volume 9.75. Similarly, sodium acetate will 1 ml will deliver 2 milliequivalent. So dose divided by milliequivalent per ml, that is 5 by 2, we will get 2.5. Similarly, we can find out all the volumes by this conversion formula. Now we can write a TPN. Let us write it. Amino acid 7.5 gram per day and dextrose 10.5 mg per kg per minute, sodium chloride 5, sodium acetate 5, potassium chloride 3.5, potassium phosphate 4, magnesium sulfate 1, calcium 750, and multivitamin water soluble is 2.5, multivitamin fat soluble it is 10, and trace element it is 0.5, and the lipid will be 2.2 gram per kg per day, and the total TPN volume is 250. Good. Then how to deal with osmolarity? It is important in case of peripheral line. These are the standards for peripheral line, and we can easily calculate osmolarity by using this table. It is calculated from the percentage of dextrose in final solution. We found it 17.88. So multiply by 50. Similarly, amino acid, percentage of amino acid from final, multiply by 100. For lipid, there is no contribution of osmolarity. Electrolyte, the total milliequivalent of electrolyte per liter, multiply by 2. So let us do some maths. The total volume is 212.5 ml. Percentage of dextrose is 17.88. So osmolarity contribution is 895. Percentage of protein is 3.5 and multiplier is 100. So contribution is 350. We know the total milliequivalent of electrolyte in our TPN is 22. So the total milliequivalent of electrolyte in 1000 ml, 22 multiplied by 1000 divided by 212, it is 103.6. So the osmolarity contribution is 2 into 103.6, it is 207. Now the total osmolarity is 1452 milliosmol. That indicates this TPN is only suitable for central line. Okay, let's see about the calcium and phosphate compatibility. Calcium and phosphorus are most common essential electrolyte in use in TPN, and when we use it together it will absorb good. But if we mix in too high concentration, calcium and phosphorus may form insoluble precipitate as calcium phosphate. At least 4 reported cases of death due to pulmonary embolism that result from calcium phosphate precipitate. This is especially critical in TNA, total nutritional administer. Why? Because the lipid emulsion clouds the solution, making it nearly impossible to visually inspect the particles. Moreover, TNA we replaces 0.2 micron filter to 1.2 micron, so this filter cannot remove calcium phosphate precipitate. Then what are the factors? Main factors affect the solubilities, amino acid concentration, pH of formulation, and temperature of storage, and calcium salt use, order of mixing of calcium and phosphorus, and concentration of electrolyte, especially calcium and phosphorus. Okay, the risk of calcium phosphate precipitation can be reduced by the following points. We always keep amino acid in a greater concentration, ideally 2.5, and maintaining the final pH acidic, and infusing the prepared solution within 24 hours of preparation, using calcium gluconate instead of calcium chloride, and use glycophos instead of potassium phosphate if it is possible, and avoid the close mixing of calcium and phosphorus, and keeping the calcium and phosphorus ratio at least 1:2, and the total amount of calcium and phosphorus will be less than 40 milliequivalent per liter. This graph will show the incompatible calcium and phosphorus ratio, because the point you can see the far right to the graph. But here you can see amino acid percentage is 3.2. The point is between graph B and C. Graph B means 20%, 2% amino acid, C means 3.5. Our amino acid for final solution is 3.2, so it is a compatible graph. This is how we can enter the formula into TPN, and this is the volume of calculation for preparing TPNs, and this is the graph of our test patient. Test patient amino acid concentration is 3.5, but the point is well below the graph C. We can reach up to graph C, but the point resides even at graph A. Graph A, even with 1% amino acid, we can process this quantity of calcium and phosphorus. Okay, let us start compounding. The first step before compounding is to check the ingredients and consumables like medication label, physical damage, color, particles, precipitation, expiry date. Okay. Now let's start manual compounding. The technician should review the calculation table before filling the ingredients to syringes. Syringes should be properly separated by placing syringes right to each ingredient, and can be used different color needles to separate similar size syringes. And fill each required ingredient in syringes as per the calculated data. Double checking is required time by time by the second pharmacist for each ingredient filled in the syringes against calculated data before filling into the final bag. And the mixing of ingredients should follow the standard mixing sequence in order to avoid close mixing and chances of precipitation. Yes. Then the final visual inspection, I go a little fast. This is nowadays TPN compounder replaces the manual compounding. Here we use 5-step compounding, initial pre-setup, and finally we can start compounding. The 5-step I can just mention, it is a load cell calibration, selection of configuration, then tube set changing, priming the tube set, finally the calibration of the compounder. After that, we can either scan the formula or we can enter the patient requirement for compounding TPN. Okay, USP 797 chapter. This chapter describes the minimum standard to be followed when preparing compounding the sterile and human and animal drugs. Sterile compounding is defined as combining, mixing, diluting, cooling, reconstituting, repacking, otherwise altering the drug to create a sterile preparation. USP 797 chapter describes all the personnel, facility, product, process, training and certification requirement to prepare CSP by any institution. Sterile compounding personnel must strictly follow aseptic technique protocol throughout the compounding process. Let us talk about aseptic technique, the last part. It is attitude towards the compliances following the rules to maintain aseptics throughout compounding. Then what are the sources of contaminant? We are the main sources, humans. While our movements and speed, it creates a lot of particles, and the second source is air supply to the lab. The third will be the adjacent infiltrations, so for example anteroom, and the fourth one is the internal cause like walls, floors, furnitures. This is how PP is done. Then laminar hood cleaning, it should be properly sterilized before and after preparation. Then cleaning must be from top to bottom and from back to front, and the bottom will be the last surface to be cleaned, and we need to use two cleaning step, sterile water, then isopropyl alcohol, and cleaning must be unidirectional with 25 to 50 overlapping. This is how it is cleaned, and how to place a medicament correctly in the hood. Okay, we need to place directly into the first air, and all aseptic manipulation should be performed at least 6 inches within the hood to prevent the possibility of contamination from room air entering the hood. And this is how the syringe is handled. We should not touch the critical site like lower lock and plunger. We can only touch the barrel and tip. This is the first air. What is first air? First air is the air, unidirectional air exiting from the HEPA filter free from the particle. Good aseptic technique in sterile compounding requires understanding and proper use of first air. It is a unidirectional air and visually free from particle. All the critical manipulations must be carried out under unobstructed first air zone. And this is a DCA. What is DCA? This is a critical area inside the class 5 laminar code of the primary engineering control, where we use the aseptic manipulation, and DCA is the only portion of ISO class 5 devices dedicated to the task of aseptic manipulations. This is how we dispose waste safely, and this is the UV treatment, and the finished preparations of each TPN ordered previously stored in refrigerator and must be dispensed at the requested location via cold chain transport to the concerned nursing staff. The nursing staff must double check the prescription against the TPN order and physically for any damage, leakage, particle or anything. And the nursing staff must acknowledge the receipt of TPN. Home message for you: enteral TPN is always best. And for peripheral nutrition, the osmolarity is the right limiting step, and we can use 900 milliosmol for adult, 1000 for pediatric and 1100 for neonates. And the maximum amino acid concentration is 2.5 and dextrose is between 7.5 to 2. And all sterile preparation should be done at least 6 inches inside ISO class 5 laminar hood. And for adding TPN, we need to increase amino acid and make the ratio of calcium and phosphate 1:2, and the total will be less than 45 milliequivalent per liter. And as an example, each 100 ml TPN with 2% amino acid can add 400 mg of calcium and 2 milliequivalent of phosphate. Thank you so much.